Hello everyone, welcome back to GED's skill builds for Borderlands 3. Today we're doing Amara. I personally am not going to play Amara because I main Flak and Mose, but this character has the potential to be an absolute powerhouse for sure. Today we're doing our blue build in Mystical Assault, and we're dubbing it the Space Wizard because it is projectile based and it does crazy amounts of long range damage. So basically, you start with your first ability here, Phase Cast. She sends forth an astral projection, dealing damage. It's pretty much just like a laser in one direction, hits one or two guys if they're lined up in a row. It is pretty powerful by itself, but it's going to be augmented to the max. Let's check out the first row here. Do harm. Killing an enemy grants Amara stacks of rush. Activating her skill consumes all rush. For each stack of rush consumed, Amara's action skill damage is increased. So basically you build up your rush stacks with kills and then you launch them forth in your laser blast of Phase Cast. Pretty good. Fast hands. Amara's reload speed, weapon speed, and mode switch are improved. I'm not really a fan of this. I don't feel like Borderlands really has a problem with reload or weapon speed unless you get really late game and absolutely need it. Violent Tapestry is the third one. Applying status effects gets more rush, and of course using her action skill consumes the rush stacks. So max stacks of 10, and her effect chance for elemental effects is increased. Obviously, the main choice we're going to go for here is damage, action skill damage, because you are a space wizard. You're launching your laser beam out, or whatever it's called, the old Phase Cast, and it's doing max damage with those rush stacks. Second row brings us to Alacrity. Amara gains more reload speed for rush stacks, and using her rush stacks increases the reload speed. It's reload speed. I mean, come on, it's not really super amazing. Amara gains increased accuracy and crit hit damage, though, with Transcend for a few seconds after activating her action skill. So you get a bunch of accuracy and crit hit damage for 12 seconds. Wow, that is quite a duration there. Third skill is Restless. Amara gains increased action skill cooldown, so you can fire more laser blasts with Phase Cast or Phase Burst more often. It's a beautiful thing. Cooldown is just beautiful. And also an augment of Soul Sap. A portion of all damage is returned as lifesteal. Late game, if you're having trouble staying alive, might be a valid option, but we're going to ignore this one for now. The choices we want to make here are accuracy and crit, because, I mean, 40% accuracy basically, and it's almost a 30% crit hit damage boost. It's a lot. It's a lot. And we need to fill out 2 more points, so we're obviously going to get a little bit of action skill cooldown of 10%, so we can fire more massive wizard bursts every now and again. Now we're going to drop down to the third row, where we get our first augment change, or basically new skill. Deliverance. Amara sends forth an astral projection, hitting everything in its path, obviously. Whenever Amara's astral projection damages an enemy, it releases homing projectiles that trigger her skill elemental effect. Guys, it launches 3 homing projectiles that do buku damage and apply her elemental effect. Yes, all the way every day. Just get that. Just straight up get that. It's so good. And this is our primary skill we're going to be using during this build. Ascendant is a 1-point skill. All action skill augments gain increased effects. So basically, your action skill becomes amazing. Like, it's one skill in this row and you have to get it. No matter what you do, you have to get it. Look at all those augments. I'm not going to read them all, but it's just a crazy boost. Stillness of Mind is your second augment that we get here. Enemies damaged by her action skill become phase locked. So if you hit an enemy with your action skill, they basically become phase locked. Now, I'm going to make an assumption here that all the homing projectiles as well will phase lock enemies. So technically, if you hit one enemy and those homing projectiles go to three different targets, you're going to phase lock all of them. This is just an assumption. We'll see how this actually works in game, but we're going to keep that there for the CC effect, which is just ridiculously overpowered. It also has a cooldown and max duration and damage. It does lower the damage a little bit, but I mean, you're a space wizard. You're just chucking these things out, right? You're laser beaming the whole group. To get to the next row, we do have to drop 4 points. Here's where personal choice kind of comes into play. It has to be in this tree. I would say Violent Tapestry you would want because it increases status effect chance. So basically, if you're using Maliwan weapons or your Phase Burst, you're basically getting more elemental procs on enemies, which is Amara's whole thing. She's an elementalist, right? We're a space wizard, again. Level 4. Reverberation. Amara sends forth an astral projection of herself, damaging everything in its path, and deals increased damage for every enemy it hits. In Borderlands, man, guys, enemies don't line up that often. They're running around, they're running left and right on the horizontal plane. It's really hard to hit multiple enemies unless they're like grouped up with some sort of ability that pulls them in, like a singularity grenade. If you're kind of basing around that, I would say, yeah, do this. But I don't like pushy effects. I like to just have projectiles that hit the enemy 100% of the time, all the time. From Rest, Amara gains improved fire rate and charge time. That's actually pretty good, because again, Maliwan weapons require a charge time. Laid Bare. Enemies take increased damage from all sources for a few seconds after being hit with your action skill. All sources, guys. Grenades, rocket launchers, guns, more skills. It doesn't matter. Melee attacks. They're taking more damage. Get this. Max it out. We got 2 more points to use in this row, but damage increase of 25% after being hit with your Space Wizard Lightning Bolt. Just pure awesomeness. Wrath is the third one. Amara gains increased gun damage. This is increased after you activate your action skill. Gun damage, action skill, yes, 2 points in there for just free damage. I mean, you're using your action skill all the time here, so might as well get that free damage. Fifth row, we're moving down. Remnant. When Amara kills an enemy with a gun or an action skill, she creates a homing projectile. More homing projectiles. Remnants seem absolutely amazing, guys. And then we have Awakening. Amara rush stacks gained increased effectiveness. These are all both 0-3 skills, and you require 5 points to move down. So I would personally say max Remnant for that free damage again every time you kill anything. And then you get an extra rush effectiveness for your buffs. When you're proccing those 2 rush passives, you're just unloading more rush stacks, more buffs, right? And then we have a little side ability here. Tandava. She sends forward an astral projection of herself. When it hits a target, it explodes. It's basically just like, I don't know, a nuclear blast. Depending on how big it explodes, this skill could be cool, but again, I like the free homing projectiles because they're always going to hit. They're always going to make remnants when you kill guys, and it's just a homing Space Wizard, Lightning Bolt, Magic Missile, whatever you want to call it, build. Awesome. Last row here, we get Avatar. Her action skill can be activated while it's on cooldown. Will only be usable once per cooldown, right? Once every rotation. If it kills an enemy, it refunds half of your rush stacks. I mean, this is a no-brainer. It's your ultimate skill in this tree. Get it. So basically, you can fire 2 blasts for every cooldown, and if you kill an enemy, you get some of your rush stacks from your upper skills back. So you're staying stacked, you're staying crazily awesome. It's just awesome. And then we're going to rotate here. We're going to go over to our next skill tree, which is the red Fist of the Elements skill tree. Since Amara is going to be using her action skill so much, we want stuff that complements that action skill, that adds a little bit of her elemental passive, right? So in the first tree, we have Anima. Amara's status effects deal increased damage over time, and action skill status effects deal further damage. So this boosts your elemental by a crazy amount, right? Steady Hands. Amara gains increased weapon handling and accuracy. Psh, don't need it. Accuracy, weapon handling, nah, no thanks. Infusion. Convert a portion of damage dealt by her weapons into action skill element. So it's basically just converting some of your gun damage into free elemental damage, which is boosted by pretty much everything Amara has. Your choice between the third one and the first one, I personally would go with the first one because increased damage over time and duration and action skill status effects. It's just so good to make your Space Wizard maximize that burn, that shock, that corrosive, whatever you're using, right? Second row in the red tree, Tempest. Amara deals increased elemental damage. Shock damage is further increased. More damage, right? Elemental. Illuminated Fist. Amara gains increased melee damage, and her melee damage is converted to her action skill element. This is not a close range fighter build. We are a Space Wizard. We are sitting back. We are launching our homing projectiles, and we are doing max laser magic missile damage. No, we'll pass. Wildfire. Whenever Amara applies a status effect to an enemy, it has a chance to spread to a nearby enemy. This one, depending on the radius of this spread, like if it's all the entire screen and the status effect spreads that far, yeah, this might be viable. But until we know for sure, we're going to play it safe and go back to more elemental damage. We want to maximize that damage. The side skills in this entire tree, I'm not even going to look at except for one. When we drop down to this next row, this augment here is a singularity skill. So Allure is on the third row here. Every time you use your action skill, it creates a singularity that pulls in enemies. It's uncertain how it's going to work with the what is it called here? I can't toggle over it. Let's drop down here. The Deliverance skill. If it activates immediately when you use your ability and it pulls them towards Amara, it's going to be bad. But if it activates when it hits an enemy, then it could potentially be a game changer, because then you're going to get all your enemies grouped up for those homing projectiles, and they're just going to plop them in the face and spread those elemental effects, right? Could be a good augment, but for now we're going to keep Phase Lock on down there in slot number 1. Only 1 point in this tree for gun damage increase with Dread every time an enemy is grasped. So this is kind of a tricky one. We don't really want this because we don't use grasping spells. So we're going to have to go back and kind of augment one of our other second rows here. Pretty much is a choice between Wildfire and Infusion. If you want to do more gun damage into elemental damage, which I would say yes at this point, because we have a ton of augments for our elemental damage and shock damage, and the other tree just tons of elemental augment, you might want this skill of Infusion, because converted damage of 40% into elemental is going to increase your damage output on Amara because she does so much elemental. 7 points left, and we're in the 4th tier of the red tree. We have Indiscriminate. Amara's bullets that damage enemies, keyword damage enemies, have a chance to ricochet and deal decreased damage to other enemies. Ricochet chance and damage are increased if the target is afflicted by Phase Grasp or Stillness of Mind. So we have Phase Grasp on. Actually, no, we don't. We have Phase Lock on. But regardless, this skill is probably one of Amara's best skills in our entire tree lines, because if you're shooting those bullets at enemies, any bullets, it doesn't matter if you have a Jacob's weapon or not, you want this because they're ricocheting, they're doing tons of damage, and it's just amazing. Deep Well is the next one. You gain increased magazine size only with elemental weapons, so you must have an elemental weapon equipped for this boost. It could be your thing, it could be nice, depending on how often you reload, but I would probably skip it until you need it, right? Catharsis is the third one. Whenever Amara triggers an elemental effect on an enemy or the enemy dies, it explodes, dealing that enemy's attuned element damage. So an explosion of awesomeness is kind of cool, but again, if you don't have a way to like pull in enemies to make them group with a la Allure, it's not super valuable. What I would recommend doing here is you can either fill out both of these and get a little bit of extra everything, Or you can just go back a little bit in your tree and you could make it spread. Personally, I would say you want to just max this out until you get to the next tree with 2 points. Then you're down in Amara's 5th tier of the red tree, which is kind of good. Sustainment. Amara gains life steal whenever she deals elemental damage with her weapon. This build does not really have a lot of super sustain yet, right? We don't have damage reduction. We don't have anything that really sustains us. I would actually recommend sustain 100%. Conflux. Whenever Amara applies a status effect to an enemy, she gains a chance to randomly electrocute, ignite, or melt that enemy. So if you apply one status effect, you're going to apply probably another one with that little chance of doing it. It's going to be 14% because we only got 2 points. Personally, I would recommend for endgame build, get some lifesteal because you want to be able to live through fights, live through boss fights. If you're dealing elemental damage with your weapon, you're probably going to be able to survive with lifesteal, which is actually pretty good, 8%. I mean, it's nothing to shake a stick at because you're still healing some of your damage. So this is the Space Wizard build, guys. You're chucking out amazing deliverance blasts. You're locking down enemies with homing projectiles, with extra rush stacks of amazingness. You are ascended. Every time you kill something, there's more damage going out. There's tons of extra burn, extra shock, extra gun damage being converted into elementals. And heck, you're ricocheting bullets all around while you're doing it. Tell me what you think of this build. Guys, if you play Amara, she is definitely going to be amazing. The sirens are always amazing. Have fun, and I'll see you in Borderlands 3.